Hello, I'm Li Hao. So today I have a challenge for you. How to make a class property to be like a store. So the question is like this. I have a scenario where I have a class called clock, which has a property called time. So this time right now is the current time, but I have a function called tick that will update this property every tick. So I can call this tick method every time, every second, or every few minutes. That does not matter. But every time when I call this method, I'm gonna change this property called time. And what I want is that I want to subscribe to this class property I have. So over here, I'm using this clock. I'm creating a new instance of this clock, and every interval I'm calling a tick method. Right, every 1 second for now. And over here, I want to always show this clock time. I want to show that it's, so I have two places. One is in a reactive statement where I'm assigning this clock time to a variable, and hopefully this variable can, hopefully these statements will be re-evaluated every time when the clock time is changed. Of course, right now it does not. Because if I uncomment this, you notice that actually we are calling a tick method every second, but you only see one console over here, which means that to Svelte, not all the variables over here say this is a assignment. So all the variables on the right, which is the clock, has not changed so far, right? Which is true because we haven't changed the clock variable. Over here, time is being assigned over here. So all Svelte can see is that the clock has not changed, and therefore this is not going to be re-evaluated every time when you call the clock.tick. Same thing goes if I come over here and say clock.time instead. Again, this clock variable has never changed, so we are not going to update this text over here. But how about when we assign it to a variable? I'm assuming that the time clock does not change. It's okay, but I'm assuming the time variable should change. I guess this should change, right? Because the time variable is the time property is what we are changing so far. But again, Svelte does not see that. Svelte does not know that every tick you update this property. It does not know when this is updated. There's no way to know. So what should we do? So to know a variable that has changed is either whether the variable is being defined as a top level variables in a script tag, which is like a state to the component. Yes, there's ways, if you update those variables, Svelte will know immediately. But over here, clock is a class. It could be written in a separate file, or it could be written in your app.svelte. But then all its property is not a top level variables in a script tag. Therefore, it is not a state to the component, and therefore Svelte has no way to know that they has changed. Svelte compiler will not analyze until that level to know actually this property has changed. There's no way to trace this. You can change this variable everywhere, right? If you pass this clock instance to anywhere and you call the tick function, a tick method, the variable will change. In terms of compiling time, in terms of the compile time, there's no way to trace that deep to know actually all the places where you call the tick method and therefore add those kind of reactivity over there, unless you trace it, unless you use some sort of runtime method like a proxy to figure those things out, right? Or maybe like some sort of dependency tracking. But here, so what we left over here is, of course, yes, you can use some sort of dependency tracking library to help us with this. But in this video, we're going to take a look at how we can use store to help us. Right? So store, I can see two ways to use a store to help us out in this scenario. So first is take a look at, so to come up with that two ideas that I have, it stems out with this statement: time equals clock.time. And as I explained earlier, clock has never changed, so Svelte does not treat this as something that will ever be re-evaluated anymore. So there's only two methods that you can do over here, right? First is that, how about we let Svelte knows that clock actually is a store. Clock is something that you need to subscribe to, right? That is possible, right? So one is you make the clock like a store, and a store with a property that has like a time. So over here, you kind of subscribe to the clock, right? That is one way, way number one. And don't worry, we're gonna explore both of them. We're gonna try both of the idea that I can think of for now. So first is you treat clock as a store, okay? Second way that I can think of is, how about we treat time as a store? So what I mean is that, say for example, let's come up with another reactive statement, or not. Maybe we have like a time store variable equals to clock dot time. Okay, and what you have here instead is you are consoling the time store. So this is a, you can even do cons, right? This is a variable, but this is a store variable, which means that this can be subscribed and the value can change. So if you do this over here, we are telling Svelte that, okay, this is a store, subscribes to it. If the store value changes, then you have to run this again. So the way you probably would want to use is come over here and do this, right? You come over here and write time store. So this is method number 2. Right, time store. So let's write the method number 1 as well. Here is the clock.time. Right. So if you take a look at how I come out with this, you notice that the initial code that we have, time equals to clock.time. I'm looking at this statement, time equals to clock.time, and this, if you want this to be reactive, to be something like a store that you can subscribe to, then there's only two possibilities, right? One is the clock itself is a store, or secondly is that the clock.time, the time is a store. So that's why first one is we treat the clock as a store, and we do this so that we can subscribe to the clock. And secondly is we treat time as a store. So if you get the time out as a variable, then we can subscribe to it. Right? Do note that although time is a store, we can't really do like this, because $time is not a you have to define this as a property. And again, this does not make Svelte think that it is a store. Svelte only looks at the variable over here, right? So if we assign it to something else and now itself is a variable, then we can use a dollar that variable to subscribe to it. Okay, so let's start with the first idea, right? Clock as a store. So what is a store? Store is a contract where store says that any variable that you can treat it as a store when it implements this method called subscribe. And of course, if you want it to be writable, you want the store to be able to be updated, then you implement the set method, right? And the subscribe method itself takes in a function which is like a listener, a subscriber, and you have to notify that function every time that you something has changed. So yeah, and then that function, when you call subscribe method, you should return also a function to unsubscribe to the store, right? So this is the store contract. We've explored that. You can find this video in the link in the description, or even in my channel. Say what is a store contract, and you will find that. So let's start with implementing the clock itself, the class itself as a store, right? So this clock is a class, right? And all these are the methods. So what we can do actually, very simply, is to implement this subscribe methods. Once you implement this subscribe method, clock is not subscribe. You can already treat the clock as a store, right? So if I come over here and comment other things away, clock is not a store with a wait, I do write subscribe. Right now you see that this is a subscribe, and you need to return a function. Return a function to unsubscribe. Now you implement this. Immediately you are making this clock instance, this clock class instance, a store. So what do we notify? What do we send to this clock? Right. So we can come over here and record down all these functions, subscriber function, function, and we need to tell them the value, right? I need to tell like a value, for example, time. Okay, I can do it two ways. One is I pass it with everything I have for this class. So every time this class has something changed, yeah, I would have to notify the subscriber with the entire thing. So whatever I get from this, whatever is treated as a store value from this store variable is the whole class instance. Okay, so if I do this, then I can get anything I have. So it's not about time. It also have this tick. If you do this, hold on, what's wrong again? Subscriber. Okay. Yeah, you can also call tick over here. It will still work, right? So it will. The store value itself is the class itself, right? Everything you see there is a value. So that is one way. Of course, if you want to limit whatever you can subscribe to, like you limit only the properties that you can get, then maybe you can create an object instead and just pass down properties that you want to be accessible from the store as a store value. So I'm going to pass just the time, this dot time. And now you see that clock.tick is not a function. It complains because whatever is treated as the store value is whatever you pass it over here. So it only has the time. Right. So it kind of, I'm not sure about you. It really depends on what you want, right? So this may make it a bit less intuitive because, you know, clock itself has all this time and tick method. But once you treat it like a store, then the store value only have time property. So it's up to you, right? So for simplicity, I'm just gonna pass everything like I just pass this over here so that I don't have to write so many things over here. And now I also need to record the subscriber down so that every time when I call tick, I also have to call the subscriber this, right? I have to come over here to get this reference and call this. Right, so probably I would have to do things like maintain a list of subscribers, and over here I'm gonna push this dot subscribers dot push subscriber, and over here I'm gonna loop through this dot subscribers dot push dot for each of them. I'm gonna call this, right? Every time I tick, I will have to come over here and notify with a new value. And immediately you can see now this is updating. Even here, even here it's being triggered, right? You can see this is being console out now. This is great, except that it's undefined because this is tick. So we're gonna change it to time. You can see that this is being called with a new time every time now. Right, we are making our clock a store. We're making a clock class instance a store. Because this is a lot to implement. Although it does not seem that way many, and we even forget how to implement the unsubscribe, which is we have to subscribers and splice and get the instance to remove it. Subscribers dot index of subscriber. And we need to remember to clean it up, right? This does not look a lot, but there's actually an easier way to do this, which is to use a writable store. So we can use inbuilt stores, writable, for example, and we can rely on them to handle all the subscribers for us. So what we need to do now is just create a store first upfront. So I'm gonna say this is the store, okay, writable So what you pass in is the value of this store, right? We're gonna pass in this. And over here in the subscribe method, we can do is we can call it store, and then we say a subscribe. We can call this subscribe. We can delegate this to our store object over here. It's called subscribe, subscriber. I'm gonna return this, right? So the store helps us to do the subscriber. It also returns a function to unsubscribe, so we just return it directly. So all of this being delegated to this writable store that we have over here. Okay, then the next thing is, man, I forgot. Probably there's too many stores running. That's why, because we forgot to do a cleanup. So I'm going to refresh this page now so that it stops consoling. Right? Okay. Now, and it stops because we haven't notified our store that something has changed. I'm going to come over here. Now we don't need subscribers. So we come over here and we notify our store. So I'm going to say this store and sets this. Right? So we're going to set whatever is the updated value, right? So now if we are using this as the value of the store, then we use this. If you were thinking of doing this, like the time, then you have to write this over here like this, right? So it's up to you, whatever, what is the value of this store. So I'm going to be lazy and write this, and that's all. And you can see now it's nicely done. My store is ticking. This is the we treat the clock instance as a store. Okay, so next we're gonna try a second method, which is to treat just a property itself as a store. So over here I am gonna pause it for now. I'm gonna let's see, not pause it, I'm gonna copy all this and create another file, clock, so that the link of this REPL will be in the description, and so that you can compare this to implementation, right? Clock 2. So I'm gonna replace this. I'm gonna replace. Okay, no, I don't have to replace. I'm gonna say import clock 2 from clock 2. Okay, and for the time being, I'm gonna stop ticking so that less noise over here. And then I'm gonna use my clock 2. Create a clock 2. Clock 2.tick. And now we want to figure out how to do this, which is get a property and treat it as a store. So let's see. So we can use the same idea, which is to use a writable, but itself has to be a store, right? So this time actually has to be a writable store. And now every time when we tick, we're gonna say this dot time dot sets. Right? So every time we tick, gonna update this writable store over here. So over here, clock dot time store. Oh, hold on, clock dot time. Oh, this should be clock 2 dot time is a store. And now if I uncomment this, you see that this number is updating every tick. And over here you can see this is being console out on every tick, because yeah, this itself is a store now. So what does that mean? What that means is that if I clock 2 dot time, if I get this is no longer a value. I can't read this value now. I have to treat it as a store, and I have to either do this to get the value of the store, or I have to import the get from Svelte Store to get the value out of this time variable over here. Like I have to get dot time to actually read out the value, because it's no longer it is no longer a property, no longer a primitive, it is an object, right? Even you can't see it over here. So that's great. Depends on your use case, but to me, I feel like we kind of gain something and lose something at the same time. I want this property to be a just a primitive number, but maybe we can have some sort of convention to tell to kind of tell the user that maybe this is a very primitive value, which is a number. But if you do something like this, right, this should give you the store that you need. Or maybe even like this should give you the store that you need, right? So what that means is that actually this has no special meaning until we give it to them, right? So what this means is that we can actually have time as a normal variable, but we also define another property called maybe time dollar is equal to writable this dot time. So every time when we change the time, maybe we can come over here and say this dot time equals to the date now, and we also update this store over here and say this dot time. So now this is not something you can subscribe to, but rather this is something that you can subscribe to. So I kind of have so it kind of allows us to have flexibility of, you know, just use it as a normal value or have it specially, right? Have some sort of special thing that is like a special property that is like a store that you can subscribe to. So user can use both of them if they want to. So here I can still console log time primitive. I can have still console it as a number, and if I want to subscribe, then I use a subscribable property, right? So this is up to you. This is how you design your component. Yeah. So before I end this, I'm gonna say that this store is created every time when we create a clock, even no one is subscribing to it, and we can actually change this slightly. We can add if this is a bottleneck that you encounter and you realize that, hey, I shouldn't create this store every time when I have this clock instance because no one is subscribing to me. And if you know, no one is actually accessing this time dollar property. If you notice that, then maybe you can optimize it this way. And I'm going to show it how I would do it. So first is I instead of doing this, right, I can have like, again, like a more of a private property called time store. Yeah. So I haven't defined it yet. So I just wait. So I'm gonna have this private property called time that starts with a underscore. But at the same time, I'm gonna add a getter for this class called time dollar. Right. So this is a getter method. So this tells us that if I call this, right, it means that I'm reading the time dollar. I'm reading this time dollar property out from this class, right? So that tells me that, okay, if someone is accessing this, meaning someone is interested to the store and someone wants to subscribe to it. So only then we create this store. So I would do here is that I would create the store and store it somewhere which is like privately. So this is the variable that I'm gonna store it. This is a state that I'm gonna store it in. So I'm gonna come over here and say if this dot underscore time is already defined, right? So it's like if this is not undefined, then I'm gonna return this immediately, or else I am gonna create this, right? So maybe I can do the other way around. If it's not defined yet, I can create this dot underscore time dollar equals to writable this dot time. So I only create this writable store only when I'm accessing this time dollar property of my class. Only create it, and when in the tick method, I will also, if this time is not undefined And I only do this only when it's already defined. I only update it. I'm gonna say this.time .sets this.time. So I only update this store, create this store only when it's needed, and only update this store when it's created. So this way you kind of delay the creation of the writable store if it is a bottleneck to you. Right. So that's all that we have done so far. How to make a class property a store, or how to subscribe to a class property. Right. You can make the class itself a store, and you kind of subscribe to the class itself so that whenever the property has changed, you kind of know about it. Or you make the class property a store and you subscribe to that property. Right? So we explored two different methods, and I hope that this opens up the possibilities that you can do. And if you create something so amazing that you want to share, paste your link to the REPL or your project in the comments and share it to the world. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up. And if you have anything you'd like to say, comment down below. And as always, subscribe to my channel so that you get notified when the next one is out. So see ya. Bye bye.